Hook. In the grand halls of Valdemar Palace, where centuries-old traditions dictate every breath and gesture, a single piece of jewelry holds the power to elevate one woman above all others, or destroy the fragile peace that keeps the monarchy alive. But when Princess Ilara makes an unprecedented decision that defies protocol, she unknowingly sets in motion events that will shake the very foundations of the crown itself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Valdemar Palace, as Lady Catherine Whitmore adjusted her pearl earrings for the third time. Her reflection in the ornate mirror showed a woman of 32, elegant yet approachable, with auburn hair swept into a classic chignon and eyes that sparkled with nervous anticipation. Today marked the 15th anniversary of the Treaty of Aldemore, and the entire royal court would gather for the most significant ceremony of the year. Catherine had married Prince Alexander 3 years ago, transforming from a commoner with a background in international relations into one of the most beloved members of the Valdemaran royal family. Her genuine warmth and dedication to charitable causes had won over the public. But within the palace walls, acceptance came harder. The rigid hierarchy of court life meant that every gesture, every tradition, carried weight beyond what outsiders could imagine. As she made her way through the palace corridors, Catherine nodded politely to the staff, who paused in their morning duties to bow. The familiar scent of lavender and beeswax filled the air, mingling with the distant sound of preparations echoing from the great hall. She could hear the gentle clink of crystal and silver as the ceremonial table was being set, each piece positioned according to traditions that stretched back over 4 centuries. Princess Ilara stood at the window of her private study, watching the gardens where gardeners worked meticulously to ensure every flower bed appeared perfect for the day's festivities. At 68, she commanded respect through her unwavering dedication to duty and her deep knowledge of royal protocol. Her silver hair was already perfectly styled, and she wore a navy dress adorned with the subtle insignia of her various honorary military positions. Ilara had never married, dedicating her entire life to serving the crown and maintaining the traditions that kept the monarchy strong. Some whispered that this devotion came at a personal cost, but Ilara herself never expressed regret. She understood better than anyone that duty to the crown transcended personal desires, and she had spent decades teaching younger royals the intricate dance of court life. The relationship between Ilara and Catherine had developed slowly but surely. Initially, Ilara had been skeptical of the young woman who captured Alexander's heart. Catherine's background as a diplomat's daughter from a middle-class family was unprecedented in recent royal history. However, Catherine's genuine desire to learn and her respectful approach to tradition had gradually won Ilara's approval, and eventually her affection. In contrast, Queen Consort Isabel represented a different challenge entirely. At 55, she had married into the royal family 28 years ago as a duchess from a neighboring kingdom. Her marriage to King Frederick had been arranged to strengthen diplomatic ties, and while it had succeeded politically, Isabel had always struggled to find her place within Valdemaran traditions that differed significantly from her homeland customs. Isabel possessed an undeniable elegance and sharp intelligence that served her well in diplomatic functions. However, her tendency to favor efficiency over tradition often created tension within the palace. She had modernized many aspects of court life during her reign. Some changes welcomed, and others quietly resented by those who viewed tradition as the backbone of monarchical stability. The most significant source of tension between Isabel and the rest of the royal family centered around the Aldemore brooch, a stunning piece of jewelry that had become the symbol of the highest honor within the royal family. The brooch, crafted from rare Valdemaran sapphires and diamonds, was traditionally bestowed upon the family member who had demonstrated exceptional service to the crown during the previous year. For the past 5 years, Isabel had worn the brooch, recognizing her successful diplomatic initiatives that had strengthened Valdemar's international relationships. However, this year whispers throughout the palace suggested that change might be coming. Catherine's establishment of the Royal Children's Foundation and her successful advocacy for education reform had garnered both public acclaim and recognition within royal circles. As the morning progressed, guests began arriving for the ceremony. Foreign diplomats, members of parliament, religious leaders, and distinguished citizens filled the palace reception areas. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, as many had heard rumors about potential changes in this year's ceremony, but none knew exactly what to expect. Catherine found herself in the blue salon, greeting guests alongside other junior members of the royal family. Her natural ease with people served her well as she moved from conversation to conversation, discussing everything from recent charitable initiatives to cultural exchange programs. Several guests specifically praised her work with the Children's Foundation, and she could see the genuine pride in Alexander's eyes as he watched her interact with their subjects. Meanwhile, Isabel held court in the gold drawing room, surrounded by ambassadors and high-ranking officials. Her conversations focused on trade agreements and international cooperation, subjects where her expertise truly shone. She wore an elegant emerald dress that complemented her dark hair, and around her neck hung a necklace that had belonged to Queen Victoria of Valdemir, a subtle reminder of her position within the royal hierarchy. Princess Elara moved between both groups, observing and occasionally participating in conversations, but those who knew her well could sense an underlying tension in her demeanor. She carried herself with her usual dignity, but her eyes held a thoughtfulness that suggested important decisions weighed on her mind. The palace's ancient bells began to chime, signaling that the ceremony would commence in 1 hour. Staff members discreetly began guiding guests toward the Great Hall, while family members retreated to their respective chambers for final preparations. The anticipation that had been building all morning now reached a crescendo, as everyone understood they were about to witness a ceremony that might mark a significant shift in royal tradition. Catherine returned to her chambers to change into her ceremonial dress, a custom-designed gown in Valdemaran blue that honored both tradition and her personal style. As her lady's maid helped with the final details, Catherine reflected on how much her life had changed since joining the royal family. The learning curve had been steep, but she had approached every challenge with determination and humility. She thought about the Aldermore brooch and what it represented beyond its obvious beauty. The piece symbolized recognition, achievement, and most importantly, the trust of the royal family and the people of Valdemir. While she had heard the whispers suggesting she might be considered for this honor, Catherine had tried not to dwell on the possibility. Such recognition would mean everything to her, but she also understood the political complexities that surrounded every royal decision. Isabel, in her own chambers, was putting the finishing touches on her appearance with the help of her personal stylist. She had specifically chosen jewelry that complemented the Aldermore brooch, assuming she would wear it again this year. Her diplomatic achievements over the past year had been substantial, including negotiating a crucial trade agreement that would benefit Valdemir's economy for decades to come. As she looked at herself in the mirror, Isabel felt confident about maintaining her position as the brooch's bearer. Her relationship with Princess Elara had always been cordial but somewhat distant, marked by their different approaches to royal duty. While she respected Elara's traditionalism, Isabel sometimes felt that progress required challenging established norms rather than simply preserving them. The final 30 minutes before the ceremony found the palace in a state of controlled anticipation. Staff members made last-minute adjustments to decorations and place settings, while security personnel ensured that every protocol was properly followed. The Great Hall, with its soaring ceilings and magnificent tapestries depicting Valdemaran history, had been transformed into a setting worthy of the most important ceremony of the year. Princess Elara stood alone in her private study, holding a small velvet box that contained the Aldermore brooch. The sapphires caught the afternoon light streaming through her window, creating brilliant flashes of blue that seemed to dance across the walls. For several minutes, she simply held the box, contemplating the decision she had made and its potential consequences. Her choice had not been made lightly. Weeks of consideration had led her to conclude that this year's recipient should represent not just achievement but the future direction of the monarchy itself. The decision would undoubtedly surprise some and disappoint others, but Elara had learned long ago that leadership sometimes required making difficult choices that served the greater good rather than individual preferences. As the bells began their final chime sequence, signaling the immediate start of the ceremony, all the principal players in this royal drama made their way toward the Great Hall. Catherine walked with quiet confidence, her training in royal protocol evident in every graceful step. Isabel moved with the assured bearing of someone accustomed to being at the center of important events. Princess Elara carried herself with the dignity of someone about to fulfill a crucial duty. The guests had already taken their seats according to strict protocol, with foreign dignitaries and government officials occupying places of honor near the ceremonial platform. The hall fell silent as the royal family entered in order of precedence, their formal procession a carefully choreographed display of monarchical tradition. King Frederick, resplendent in his ceremonial uniform adorned with medals and ribbons representing his decades of service, took his place at the center of the platform. Queen Consort Isabel stood to his right, her posture perfect and her expression one of serene confidence. Prince Alexander and Catherine positioned themselves according to their rank, while Princess Elara stood slightly apart, her role in the ceremony still unknown to most observers. The ceremony began with traditional readings that honored the Treaty of Aldermore and its significance in Valdemeran history. Religious leaders offered blessings for the royal family and the nation, while representatives from various sectors of society presented reports on the year's achievements and challenges. The formal portions of the ceremony proceeded exactly as they had for decades, giving no hint of the surprise that awaited. As the moment approached for the presentation of the Aldermore brooch, a subtle tension filled the Great Hall. Those familiar with royal protocol recognized the significance of what was about to occur, while others simply sensed that something important was happening. Princess Alara stepped forward, the velvet box clearly visible in her hands, and the entire assembly held its breath as they waited to see who would receive the monarchy's highest honor. Princess Alara's voice carried clearly across the Great Hall as she began the traditional invocation that preceded the brooch presentation. Her words, spoken in the formal cadence that marked all ceremonial occasions, seemed to hang in the air with unusual weight. Every person present understood they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. Today we gather not only to commemorate the Treaty of Aldermore, but to recognize exceptional service to our kingdom and its people, Alara announced, her gaze sweeping across the assembled guests before settling on the royal family. The Aldermore brooch represents the highest honor we can bestow, symbolizing dedication, achievement, and the embodiment of values that strengthen our monarchy and our nation. Isabel stood with perfect composure, her years of experience in ceremonial functions evident in her calm demeanor. She had participated in this moment 4 times previously, each occasion marking another year of successful service to the crown. Her diplomatic achievements over the past year had been particularly noteworthy, including the successful negotiation of 3 major trade agreements and the establishment of new cultural exchange programs with 5 neighboring countries. The trade agreement with the Eastern Maritime Alliance alone was projected to increase Valdemere's economic growth by 12% over the next 5 years. Isabel had spent months in delicate negotiations, navigating complex political considerations while ensuring Valdemere's interests remained protected. The final agreement had been hailed by economists and political analysts as a masterpiece of diplomatic strategy. Catherine maintained her position with quiet dignity, though those who knew her well might have noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. The past year had been transformative for her, marked by the successful launch of the Royal Children's Foundation and her advocacy work for education reform. The foundation had already established 12 learning centers in underserved communities, providing educational opportunities for over 3,000 children. Her education reform initiative had resulted in new legislation that increased funding for rural schools and established mentorship programs connecting urban and rural educational institutions. The program had received overwhelming support from both educators and parents, with preliminary results showing significant improvements in student achievement across participating schools. Additionally, Catherine had personally visited over 50 schools throughout the kingdom, demonstrating her genuine commitment to understanding and addressing educational challenges. The cultural impact of Catherine's work extended beyond mere statistics. She had managed to bridge traditional royal charity work with modern social advocacy, creating programs that addressed systemic issues rather than simply providing temporary relief. Her approach had earned respect from academic institutions, non-profit organizations, and community leaders who had previously viewed royal involvement with skepticism. Princess Alara paused in her ceremonial address, allowing the weight of tradition to settle over the gathering. The Aldermore brooch had been created in 1847 by the kingdom's most skilled artisans, commissioned by Queen Adelaide to commemorate the treaty that had brought lasting peace to the region. The central sapphire, weighing nearly 15 carats, had been mined from the Royal Mountains, while the surrounding diamonds represented the 12 provinces that had united under the treaty. Over the decades, the brooch had been worn by queens, princesses, and distinguished ladies of the court who had demonstrated exceptional service to the kingdom. Each recipient had added to the brooch's legacy, creating a continuous thread of achievement and dedication that connected past and present. The selection of each year's recipient involved careful consideration of accomplishments, character, and the symbolic message such recognition would convey to both the court and the public. This year's deliberation has been particularly meaningful, Alara continued, her voice carrying a note of emotion that surprised some listeners. We have been blessed with multiple examples of outstanding service, each representing different aspects of what it means to serve the crown and the people of Valdemere with distinction. The princess's words created a ripple of murmured conversation among the guests, as many began to understand that this year's ceremony might deviate from expected patterns. Foreign diplomats leaned forward slightly, recognizing the potential significance of witnessing an unexpected development in royal protocol. Members of parliament and other officials exchanged glances, understanding that they might be observing a moment of historical importance. King Frederick maintained his ceremonial bearing, but those who knew him well could see approval in his eyes. As monarch, he had been consulted about the brooch presentation, though the final decision rested with Princess Ilara, according to tradition established by his predecessor. The king's support for Ilara's choice had been both immediate and enthusiastic, reflecting his own observations about service and achievement within the royal family. The ceremony had always balanced recognition of past achievements with symbolic messages about the monarchy's future direction. This year, that balance carried particular significance as the royal family navigated changing public expectations while maintaining the traditional values that had sustained the kingdom through centuries of challenges and transitions. Isabel's mind briefly wandered to her early years as queen consort, when she had struggled to understand and adapt to Valdemaran traditions that differed significantly from those of her homeland. The learning process had been challenging, sometimes frustrating, but it had ultimately deepened her appreciation for the complex cultural forces that shaped the kingdom's identity. Her own evolution from outsider to respected member of the royal family provided valuable perspective on the challenges faced by anyone joining the monarchy. Catherine's thoughts focused on the children and families she had met during her foundation work. Their stories had profoundly influenced her understanding of royal service, transforming her perspective from viewing charity as obligation to embracing it as genuine partnership with the communities she served. The success of her programs had been measured not just in statistics, but in the changed lives of individuals who had gained access to opportunities previously beyond their reach. The moment arrived when Princess Ilara opened the velvet box, revealing the Aldermore brooch in all its magnificent splendor. The sapphires and diamonds caught the light from the Great Hall's chandeliers, creating a display of brilliance that drew audible gasps from some guests. Even those familiar with the brooch found themselves impressed by its beauty and the symbolic power it represented. "Lady Catherine," Ilara announced, her voice carrying clearly across the silent hall, "your dedicated service to the children and families of our kingdom, your innovative approach to addressing educational challenges, and your embodiment of the values that strengthen our monarchy make you this year's recipient of the Aldermore brooch." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity, though in reality it lasted only seconds. Catherine's eyes widened with genuine surprise and emotion, her training in royal protocol temporarily overwhelmed by the unexpected honor. The significance of the moment was not lost on anyone present, as they witnessed the first time in recent memory that the brooch had passed from one member of the royal family to another in such a public and decisive manner. Applause began slowly, initiated by King Frederick himself, and gradually built to fill the Great Hall with appreciation for both Catherine's achievements and the historic nature of the moment. Foreign dignitaries, government officials, and distinguished guests rose to their feet in recognition of what they understood to be a significant development in royal tradition. Catherine moved forward with grace despite her emotional state, accepting the brooch from Princess Ilara with hands that trembled slightly. The weight of the piece was substantial, but the symbolic weight was far greater. As Ilara fastened the brooch to Catherine's dress, the transfer of honor became complete, marking not just recognition of past achievement but confidence in future service. Isabel maintained her composure, with the skill that had served her well through decades of public appearances, but the disappointment was unmistakable to those who knew how to read the subtle signs of royal emotion. Her smile remained perfect, her posture unchanged, but the slight tightening around her eyes revealed the impact of this unexpected development. Years of receiving this honor had made the brooch feel like a natural part of her royal identity, and its transfer represented a more significant change than casual observers might understand. The remainder of the ceremony proceeded according to traditional protocol, but the atmosphere had been fundamentally altered by the brooch presentation. Conversations during the reception that followed buzzed with discussion about the implications of Princess Ilara's choice and what it might signal about the future direction of the monarchy. Catherine found herself surrounded by well-wishers eager to congratulate her on the honor, but she remained conscious of the delicate social dynamics created by the situation. Her genuine humility and continued respect for Isabel helped navigate what could have been an awkward social situation, though the underlying tensions were not entirely eliminated. The brooch itself seemed to pulse with significance as Catherine wore it throughout the reception, its weight a constant reminder of the responsibility that came with such recognition. The conversations she had with guests took on new meaning, as people sought to understand her perspective on royal service and her plans for future initiatives. Princess Ilara observed the reception with satisfaction, confident that her decision had been correct despite the complications it created. Her choice reflected not just recognition of Catherine's achievements, but a strategic assessment of what the monarchy needed to thrive in changing times. The princess understood that tradition must sometimes evolve to remain relevant, and Catherine's approach to royal service represented exactly the kind of evolution that could strengthen rather than weaken royal institutions. As the afternoon progressed, the full implications of the brooch presentation began to emerge through conversations and reactions throughout the palace. Court officials discussed the precedent established by the transfer, while media representatives speculated about what the change might signal regarding the royal family's priorities and future direction. The ceremony had accomplished its intended purpose of honoring achievement and reinforcing royal values, but it had also created new dynamics that would influence royal relationships and public perceptions in ways that would become clear only with time. The Aldermore brooch had once again proven its power to symbolize not just recognition, but the ongoing evolution of a monarchy that balanced tradition with the need to remain relevant and effective in serving its people. The weeks following the Aldermore ceremony brought a period of subtle but significant adjustment within the palace walls. The transfer of the brooch had created ripple effects that extended far beyond the symbolic act itself, influencing relationships, expectations, and the delicate balance of power that governed court life. Catherine found herself navigating new responsibilities while managing the complex emotions that surrounded her unexpected elevation and status. The initial media response to the brooch presentation had been overwhelmingly positive, with newspapers and television coverage praising Catherine's charitable work and the royal family's recognition of her achievements. International press had picked up the story as well, with several major publications running features about the evolution of royal traditions and the significance of honoring work focused on children and education. Catherine's schedule became noticeably busier in the aftermath of receiving the brooch. Invitations to speak at conferences, requests for interviews, and proposals for new charitable partnerships filled her calendar at an unprecedented rate. The Royal Children's Foundation received a substantial increase in both donations and volunteer applications, as the brooch presentation had elevated public awareness of the organization's work. Despite the positive developments, Catherine remained acutely aware of the delicate situation with Queen Consort Isabel. The two women had maintained cordial interactions during public events, but the underlying tension was palpable to those familiar with court dynamics. Catherine made deliberate efforts to show respect and deference to Isabel, understanding that healing any perceived slight would require time and careful attention to protocol. Isabel, for her part, channeled her disappointment into renewed focus on her diplomatic initiatives. She scheduled meetings with ambassadors from 3 countries that had been seeking to strengthen trade relationships with Valdemir, using her expertise to advance negotiations that had been stalled for months. Her ability to compartmentalize personal emotions while maintaining professional effectiveness demonstrated the strength of character that had made her an effective queen consort for nearly 3 decades. The private conversation between Isabel and King Frederick that occurred 10 days after the ceremony revealed the depth of her feelings about the brooch transfer. In the privacy of their personal sitting room, away from the formal constraints of court life, Isabel finally expressed her hurt and confusion about Princess Ilara's decision. "I have served this kingdom faithfully for 28 years," Isabel said, her voice controlled but laden with emotion. "The trade agreements I negotiated this year will benefit our economy for decades. I cannot understand why those achievements were deemed insufficient to merit continued recognition." Frederick listened with the patience that had characterized their marriage through both its arranged beginnings and its evolution into genuine partnership. He understood his wife's perspective, while also recognizing the wisdom behind Ilara's choice.
The king's response balanced support for Isabel with explanation of the broader considerations that had influenced the decision.
"Your achievements have been extraordinary, and they continue to strengthen our kingdom," Frederick replied carefully.
But Ilara's choice reflects not just recognition of Catherine's work, but a strategic vision for how our monarchy must evolve to remain relevant and effective. Catherine's approach to royal service represents something new, something that resonates particularly well with younger generations and changing social expectations. The conversation revealed the complexity of modern monarchy, where traditional measures of achievement must be weighed against evolving public expectations and the need to demonstrate continued relevance in a changing world. Isabel's diplomatic successes were undeniably valuable, but Catherine's grassroots approach to charitable work had captured public imagination in ways that traditional royal activities sometimes failed to achieve. Princess Ilara, meanwhile, observed the aftermath of her decision with careful attention to how all parties were adjusting to the new dynamics. Her choice had been made after extensive consideration of multiple factors, including the symbolic message it would send about royal priorities, the potential for inspiring increased public engagement with royal causes, and the long-term strategic needs of the monarchy. In a private conversation with Catherine, 3 weeks after the ceremony, Ilara explained some of the reasoning behind her unprecedented decision. They met in Elara's private study surrounded by portraits of previous monarchs and shelves filled with historical documents that chronicled centuries of royal tradition and evolution. The Aldermore brooch has always represented more than simple recognition of achievement, Elara explained, her voice carrying the weight of years spent studying and preserving royal history. It serves as a symbol of the monarchy's values and priorities, a way of communicating what we consider most important for the kingdom's future. Catherine listened intently, understanding that this conversation represented a masterclass in royal leadership and strategic thinking. The princess continued, "Your work with the Foundation demonstrates exactly the kind of royal service that will strengthen our institution in the years ahead. You have shown how tradition can evolve without losing its essential character, how royal charity can address systemic issues while maintaining the personal touch that makes it meaningful." The discussion revealed that Elara's decision had been influenced by extensive research into public opinion and social trends. Polling data suggested that younger citizens particularly valued royal involvement in education and children's welfare, viewing these causes as more relevant to their lives than traditional diplomatic functions. While diplomatic work remained crucial, the symbolic power of the brooch could amplify public engagement with royal causes in ways that might prove essential for the monarchy's future legitimacy. Catherine's response to this revelation demonstrated the thoughtfulness that had impressed Elara from their first interactions. "I am deeply honored by your confidence, but I also understand the responsibility this recognition carries," Catherine said. "The brooch represents not just my work, but the potential for royal service to evolve in ways that better serve our people's needs." The conversation touched on practical matters as well, including how Catherine's enhanced status would influence her future projects and public role. Plans were discussed for expanding the Royal Children's Foundation to include additional provinces, developing new programs focused on educational technology, and creating partnerships with international organizations working on similar initiatives. As autumn progressed, the long-term effects of the brooch presentation became increasingly apparent. Catherine's influence within the royal family had grown substantially, with her opinions now sought on matters ranging from charitable policy to public engagement strategies. Her success in building bridges between royal tradition and contemporary social needs had made her a valuable advisor on how the monarchy might continue evolving to meet changing expectations. The relationship between Catherine and Isabel gradually improved as both women found ways to acknowledge each other's contributions while moving forward constructively. A private meeting between them, facilitated by Princess Elara, helped clear the air and establish a framework for continued cooperation. Isabel's graciousness in accepting the new reality enhanced her reputation for dignity and professionalism, while Catherine's continued deference and respect helped heal any lingering wounds from the ceremonial transfer. The meeting took place in the palace's rose garden, chosen for its informal atmosphere and beauty. The conversation began tentatively but gradually became more substantive as both women shared their perspectives and concerns. Isabel acknowledged that her initial reaction had been influenced by personal attachment to an honor she had carried for 5 consecutive years, while Catherine expressed genuine admiration for Isabel's diplomatic achievements and her desire to continue learning from her experience. "Your work has strengthened our kingdom in ways that will benefit generations," Catherine told Isabel sincerely. "I hope that receiving this recognition will not diminish the appreciation for your continued contributions, but rather highlight the diversity of ways royal service can benefit our people." Isabel's response reflected both her emotional maturity and her genuine commitment to the kingdom's welfare. "The brooch belongs with whoever can use it most effectively to serve our people," she replied. "If your work with children and education can inspire greater public engagement with royal causes, then Princess Elara made exactly the right choice." The autumn months also brought external validation of Princess Elara's decision. International organizations working on children's education invited Catherine to participate in global conferences and policy discussions, recognizing her as a serious advocate rather than simply a ceremonial figurehead. The distinction was important, as it demonstrated that royal involvement in social causes could achieve substantive results rather than serving purely symbolic functions. Catherine's speech at the International Conference on Educational Innovation in November received widespread media coverage and praise from education policy experts. Her presentation combined personal stories from her foundation work with data-driven analysis of successful intervention strategies, demonstrating the kind of informed advocacy that could elevate royal charitable work to new levels of effectiveness and credibility. The conference appearance also revealed how the brooch presentation had enhanced Catherine's international profile. Foreign dignitaries and policy experts now viewed her as a significant figure in education advocacy, not just a member of the royal family fulfilling traditional charitable obligations. This recognition opened doors for partnerships and initiatives that might not have been available without the enhanced credibility that came with receiving the Aldermore brooch. By December, the royal family's annual assessment of the year's achievements and challenges provided an opportunity to evaluate the full impact of the brooch transfer. King Frederick's private meeting with his senior advisors included discussion of how the decision had influenced public perception of the monarchy and its relevance to contemporary society. The assessment revealed largely positive outcomes. Public approval ratings for the royal family had increased moderately, with particularly strong support among younger demographics and parents. The Royal Children's Foundation had experienced unprecedented growth in both funding and volunteer participation, while Catherine's education advocacy had contributed to meaningful policy changes that would benefit thousands of students. Perhaps most significantly, the brooch presentation had demonstrated the monarchy's ability to evolve and adapt while maintaining its essential character and traditions. Princess Alara's decision had shown that royal institutions could respond thoughtfully to changing social needs without abandoning the historical continuity that provided their foundation and legitimacy. As the year drew to a close, the Aldermore brooch had once again fulfilled its historical purpose of symbolizing royal values and priorities while marking important transitions in monarchical evolution. Catherine wore it with increasing confidence and understanding of its significance, while the experience had deepened her appreciation for the complex considerations that guided royal decision-making. The story of the brooch transfer would be remembered as a moment when tradition and innovation found balance, when personal achievement was recognized in service of broader institutional goals, and when the monarchy demonstrated its continued capacity for thoughtful evolution. Princess Alara's unprecedented decision had proven wise not just in its immediate effects but in its contribution to the long-term strength and relevance of royal institutions. The crown's secret had been revealed through this episode. That true royal strength lay not in rigid adherence to unchanging patterns, but in the wisdom to evolve traditions in ways that honored the past while serving the future. The Aldermore brooch would continue its journey through royal history, carrying with it the story of a moment when courage, wisdom, and genuine service had combined to strengthen both individual lives and institutional legacy.